Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into something a lot of Canadians are feeling right now. It's this weird paradox where the official economic numbers look okay, but on the ground, it feels like you're falling behind. We're going to break down the source material to figure out what is really going on.
So this whole conversation really kicks off with this pretty stark warning from Mark Carney, the former head of the Bank of Canada. And when he said sacrifice, he wasn't being poetic. He was talking about a real measurable drop in our standard of living. And when you hear something like that, it brings up a really direct question, one that a lot of you are probably asking. What does this sacrifice actually mean for me, for my family? Well, that's exactly what we're here to unpack. Okay, so let's get into it. The answer starts with this idea that just perfectly captures the feeling, a personal recession. It's the reason you can feel like you're getting poorer, even when the news is talking about economic growth. And here is the key term you need to know, a per capita recession. Some people have even started calling it a Me-cession, a recession for me. The idea is the big picture economy is growing, but individual people, individual households are not getting ahead. It literally feels like a recession in your own life. And look, this isn't just a vibe, right? The numbers absolutely back this up. For a year and a half, that's 6 straight quarters, the average Canadian share of the economy has actually been shrinking. So even if the whole economic pie is getting a bit bigger, your personal slice of it is getting smaller. And that's the real paradox here. The headline number, the GDP, might look okay because it's being propped up by a growing population. But your individual share, your personal economic output, it's shrinking. In fact, we're back to where we were in 2014 in terms of individual prosperity.
So, personal recession. It sounds like an economic term, but where does it actually hit you in real life? Well, for so many Canadians, the most painful example is housing. It's the place where the basic math of owning a home has just completely broken down.
Take a look at this number, 58%. So what is that? Well, that's how much of a typical household's gross income, before taxes, would be needed just to cover the mortgage on a median-priced home today. I mean, just think about that. No bank on earth is going to approve that loan. The dream has become mathematically impossible.
And this chart right here, this just lays the whole problem bare. Look at that massive gap. Between 2015 and 2022, home prices literally doubled. They shot up 100%. And wages in that same time, they barely budged, up just 23%. This isn't about not working hard enough. The rules of the game have fundamentally changed.
Let's make this even more real. Let's zoom in on Toronto. To even think about affording an average home there, you need a household income of about $280,000 a year. The actual average income? $122,000. That is a gap of $158,000. How is anyone supposed to bridge that? The math just doesn't work. Now, what the source material argues is that this housing crisis isn't some accident. It's not a bug in the system. It's actually become a central feature of our entire economy, which has gotten dangerously hooked on real estate.
Just look at this comparison. Canada pours about 8% of its entire GDP into building houses. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but it's literally double what the United States invests. And what that means is our whole economy is walking a tightrope. If the housing market gets sick, the entire country is at risk of catching a really bad flu. So you have to ask, why are prices so insane? Well, it's a perfect storm, a classic supply and demand squeeze. For one, we just don't have enough houses. Canada has one of the lowest numbers of homes per person among developed countries, and we're not building new ones fast enough to keep up with demand, which is being fueled by things like the international student population tripling. On top of that, the cost to even build a house is exploding. In Toronto, development fees are up 40% in just 2 years, and guess who that cost gets passed on to? The buyer.
So when you're faced with this reality, this impossible math, what do? Well, for a growing and, frankly, shocking number of Canadians, the answer is you leave. You vote with your feet.
Just look at this number, 107,000. That's how many Canadians packed up their lives and left the country for good last year. That is the highest rate of people leaving in decades. And let's be really clear, they're not fleeing war or instability, they are fleeing an Excel spreadsheet that just won't balance anymore.
And the scary part is, this creates a vicious cycle. Economists call it a feedback loop, but you could also call it a death spiral. It's pretty simple. Skilled people and families leave for better opportunities. That shrinks the tax base we all rely on. Then, public services like healthcare get strained. And what happens then? Well, conditions get worse, which encourages even more people to think about leaving.
And if you're wondering why they're leaving,
This slide makes it painfully obvious. In Ontario, that mortgage eats up 58% of your income. Now compare that to a state like Texas, where it's just 28%. That's not a small difference. That is a life-changing amount of money every single month.
Okay, so this all leads to the final piece of the puzzle. And honestly, it might be the most worrying part of this whole situation. As regular people get squeezed out of the market, a huge, quiet transfer of wealth is happening right under our noses. The whole idea of home ownership is changing. Look at who's selling. It's families and individuals, often forced to sell because of the financial pressure. But who's buying? It's not other families. It's huge corporations and institutional investment funds that are snapping up these properties, not as homes, but as assets to generate cash flow. One of the sources we looked at put it in a way that is just so powerful. Your old dream of having a mortgage becomes their new asset. Your personal sacrifice becomes their corporate dividend. And the quote just says it all. The dream becomes a lease. Ownership turns into permission. So after looking at all this, the shrinking paychecks, the impossible housing market, the people leaving the country, it all boils down to one huge, really uncomfortable question, doesn't it? Is the Canadian dream, as we've always known it, dying? Well, according to this analysis, the dream isn't dying, it's being sold. It's a quiet transfer of wealth that's happening. One signature, one forced sale, one family leaving the country at a time.